And good afternoon, everybody. Happy Sunday. This is Pucks from the Pine Tree Pod. My name is Benjamin Kennedy. I thank you, as always, for joining me today. Before we get into our Nashville Predators preview here for 24-25, I just want to again express my thanks to everybody yesterday for reaching out. I've gotten more today, just people reacting to my news yesterday about the move to Black and Gold Productions and the opportunity I'm going to have to cover the Maine Mariners this coming season. So I just want to say again, thanks. It's been overwhelming and just again, really happy, really excited to get started on that. Most likely be spending a fair amount of this evening doing some stuff for the new podcast and diving more into the Mariners roster and players and all that kind of stuff. So really looking forward to that. But before I do all that, we do want to talk about the Nashville Predators. I think probably one of the more exciting teams coming into the season. Um, One of those southern markets that's really done an amazing job over these years. It's the culture down there is phenomenal. I've never had a chance to go to a game in Nashville, despite having gone to college just a couple hours away. But everything you hear about the crowds down there, it's electric. It's nuts. It's high on my list of places I want to go to check out a hockey game. But we're going to get started to talking about them, talk about their head coach, Andrew Burnett. He has, through 157 games coached, he has a 98, 48, and 11 record. So, really solid record for him. We all know back in 21-22, of course, he took over for Joel Quenneville down there in Florida after he was suspended. Did a really good job. Did a really fine job. I do remember being a little bit surprised, as I think others were, that they let him go to bring in Paul Maurice. I don't know if it was just a fit thing, if it was they thought maybe he was too young for the role. Clearly, it's worked out just fine for Florida. Maurice has been nothing but a home run fit there for the Panthers. So, that takes Burnett a couple years up to New Jersey to be an associate coach there with Lindy Ruff. And then, of course, got the job in Nashville last season. I think he did an exceptional job in the first year, navigating what was a very competitive Central Division. Going to be competitive again this year too. Salary cap, they don't have much left for this season. They have, according to Puckpedia, $596,000 dollars under the cap. Still have three active roster spots to fill. Uh, just enough for maybe one grocery shop. Not a lot left in the bank. Might be looking for some loose change there in the couch cushions. All seriousness though, they're gonna have to get a little creative, most likely to fill up the rest of this roster. Whether it's some of their AHL guys that come up, maybe they have a contract they're going to be able to move to LTIR, and of course, it is still just July, right? So there could be more moves to come for them. But they went big this offseason, and this is what happens. They did it strategically, knowing what they were doing. It just kind of ties their hands as we move forward. Uh, Looking at the draft this past season, they did have the 22nd overall draft pick this year. They took Yegor Surin, 17-year-old player out of Russia. Did get a small taste. I think he played 3 games in the KHL last season. These Russian kids, there's a lot of potential over there, and I'll be curious to see when if he's able to make it up to the Nashville roster at some point down the road. So as we do, before we look ahead, we're going to look back a little bit to 23-24, where they were 47, 30, and 5 for 99 points. Good for fourth in that Central Division, good for a wild card spot. We all remember they lost to Vancouver in 6 games in that first round, but a competitive series. The last 4 games of that were all one goal games, where I think Vancouver won 3 of the last 4 there. And one of those games, I think Nashville blew a lead. I want to say they were up by 2 goals with 3 or 4 minutes to go. I'd have to look that box score up again, but they definitely let one of those games get away. Probably played well enough to force a game 7, but that's how the puck bounces sometimes. When we kind of take a dive into their team stats, their goals for, they were at a 3.24, good for 10th in the league. Goals against 3.02, good for 14th. So they had a plus 18 In that, we're going to talk about goaltending and UC Soros here in just a few minutes. Power play, they were kind of middle of the pack, 21.6, 16th, so actually right in the middle of the pack. And their PK was 76.9, 22nd, so struggle a little bit there. Face-off circle, they were 17th in the league at a 50.4%. And they were 21st in the league in block shots with 1342. And hits, they were one of the heavier hitting teams. They were fifth in the league, 2149. When it's kind of funny when you look at that hits leaderboard, kind of team by team. I think the top three are all in the Atlantic Division. I think it's Florida, Boston, Toronto. I think were the top three in that some sort of order. But yeah, they were right there at number five. So can be a heavy team. They were again middle of the pack in the faceoff, middle of the pack playoff or power play, and their goals for goals against they were just a scotch above. The good line there being a plus 18. So kind of fits when you look at the numbers that they were a wild card team, good team, um, but no higher than that. So we're gonna look at their core skaters, and as you'll see on the board, you think, oh, you forgot Stamkos and Marchessault and Shea. Well, no, we're gonna talk about them in the roster changes. Just truth be told, the board isn't big enough. I probably do need to invest in a bigger board. So don't worry, we're gonna talk about all the changes there, and those guys are core skaters, so I know I get it. But we're gonna start with Philip Forsberg. 82 games played last year for Philip, had 48 goals, 46 assists for 94 points. So excellent year for him. Defenseman Roman Yossi played 82 games, 23 goals, 62 assists, and 85 points. Was definitely getting some Norris consideration as the season went on. Former UMaine Black Bear, Gustav Nyquist. This was a really fun story here. He played 81 games last year, had I think, a career year for himself 23 goals, 52 assists for 75 points. First time he's been over 20 goals since the 17-18 season back in Detroit. Again, always happy to give some love to former Black Bears. And then, of course, you had Ryan O'Reilly, 82 games played there, 26 goals, 43 assists for 69 points. So solid season for him. Goaltending, we all know UC Saros, Juice, played 64 games, 35, 24, and 5 record, 2.86 goals against, and a 906 save percentage. So solid year for him. Listen, we know that with Saros, the talk is always, are they overusing him? We're in a NHL today where, guys aren't playing, 65, 70 games anymore. It's more of a kind of a 55-45 split if you're lucky, if you got a good backup. And um, they've always kind of ran Saros a lot. He's dealt with some injuries, along the way, but still had a very solid season for himself. And this year they do bring in Scott Wedgwood to be his backup. Played 32 games out in Dallas last year, had a 16, 7, and 5 record, so very solid for him. 2.85 goals against and a 899 save percentage. So solid. He's always been, I think, a good kind of veteran backup guy, a guy that you can trust for, right around that 30 or so, 35 games a year. But this gets really interesting because they do lock up Saros through 2033. And you have the young Askarov, a young prospect goalie. I think he was a very high draft pick for them. I can't remember exactly where he was drafted. I'm pretty sure I remember he was a high draft pick. Um, Back in the AHL last year in Milwaukee, he played 44 games, had a 30, 13 and 1 record, a 2.39 goals against, and a 911 save percentage. So just a phenomenal year out of him. Listen, it was thought that Askarov was going to be the heir apparent to Saros, but now with Juice locked up to 2033, it's going to make it really curious to see what the Predators want to do with this kid. He's going to be a UFA in 2025, and I'm sure he's probably not thrilled, that what looked like maybe his career trajectory with Nashville might be blocked now. A lot of things can happen from here until next year. So, but just I think a story keep a watch on, see what Barry Trotz decides to do. That's a nice trade chip. Could be, you get to the trade deadline and you need a veteran player. Maybe that's a player that could help a trade along or something like that. So solid in net for the Predators coming into the season. Be curious to see how that group does. course, now we're going to talk about those key additions, and they definitely made a huge, huge splash in free agency, getting captain, Stanley Cup champion Steven Stamkos from the Tampa Bay Lightning. Uh, this was just such an interesting story all season. When Stammer, entered last year, you knew he was on an expiring contract. It was kind of a storyline all year. Like, was Tampa going to get him locked up? Get him done. Just get it locked up. They never did, and then they never did. And then December came, and they never did. And January came, and they never did. And then February, March, April, all of a sudden, season's over. No extension. No extension. I'd be really curious. Any Tampa fans out there listening to this, what are your thoughts? Has the dust settled enough for you? Are you still, fiery mad at your GM for letting him go? I don't know. He's just one of those guys. As I've commented in the past, it's gonna look really odd. It's gonna take me a minute to get used to him in a different uniform. But listen, he's 34 years old. And last year, there's no slowdown for this guy. He had 40 goals, 41 assists for 81 points through 79 games. So had just one heck of a season for himself. If he can repeat, you know, 90 or 95% of that over the next couple of years, I think this is a really uh, good acquisition for Nashville. They also add Jonathan Marchessault, another Stanley Cup winner from Vegas. Marshy had it was 82 games last year, 42 goals, 27 assists, 69 points. So yeah, two 40 goal scorers to this group that already has, uh, Forsberg with 48. You had Yossi there with a good season, good goal scoring group. You've really added some depth to your scoring group here. You also go out and get defenseman Brady Shea from Carolina. I thought was another really nice get. Good, solid veteran defenseman who should work really, really well with this with these decors here. And then, of course, we already talked about Scott Wedgwood, goalie that comes up from Dallas. So really, just a fantastic off-season free agency period for Barry Trotz. Uh, Spent all the money's gone, but yeah, I think you have invested in some really, really solid players. Going out the door is forward Jason Zucker, forward Kiefer Sherwood, forward Anthony Bavillier, and of course defenseman Ryan McDonough going back to Tampa. Kind of connected. Some people drawing the dots said, okay, Tampa brings back McDonough. They give him the money. They don't give it to Stammer, and then right as Stammer's gone, they re up Victor Hedman. Um, so McDonough they'll feel that loss a little bit. I think Shea will probably fill that gap pretty well for the team. So when you see the results from last season, a 99-point wild card berth season, and then you factor in all these changes we just talked about, some of these additions they've made the upcoming year. There's no doubt in my mind they're a playoff team. I do believe they're going to be pushing Dallas. They're going to be pushing Colorado, pushing Winnipeg for that top spot in the Central. And I think once they get to the playoff time, they're going to be a really, really tough out. Um, but they clearly are in a win now mode. Trotz took the reins of the GM position this offseason, spent that money. He spent the money, he spent the bag. There's always some risk when you sign these sorts of contracts and spend right to the limit in early July. But I also feel like they brought in the right type of free agents, high character guys, captain experience guys, Stanley Cup experience guys, and players coming out of really great team cultures. You think about what they have in Tampa, what they have in Vegas, and what they have in Carolina. All really solid cultures with really solid head coaches. So you're bringing in good guys from good programs with good pedigree. It's just I don't know what more you want Barry to do, as a GM. So I think just an excellent um, excellent acquisitions for him, and I think it really does make this team just really, really strong. Now, when you bring in these top veteran talent, kind of like they did, sometimes fitting all the pieces together can take some time. It will be up to Burnett to figure out these line combinations, power play units, all those sorts of things to get the right chemistry flowing the way you want it to. If you're a Predators fan, don't panic if this team is kind of hanging around 500. Um, a few weeks into the season. So I wouldn't panic about that. They're gonna figure it out. And it's gonna be a dominant team once they do. And hey, if they hit the ice running in October and already have their lines figured out and everything's flowing, then this Predators team could run away early with this division and kind of run away and hide. So it could be really curious. But yeah, don't panic. If it takes some time, you add all these players in, it could take a little bit. I really do feel the only thing that's going to keep this team out of the playoffs would be injuries. And yes, I know that's an obvious and maybe a silly thing to say because, of course, injuries always factor into any team for any season. But with this team, given the ages of some of these core players, I'm going to read some of these ages off to you guys. We've got, Steven Stamkos, 34, Marchessault, 33, Brady Shea is 30, Nyquist is 34, Riley's 33, Luke Shen, 34, and Forsberg will be turning 30 in August. You know, when you have those kind of ages to your core, you do have to kind of wonder a little bit about that. This team has little to no cap flexibility. So kind of the team you have is the team you got. You're not going to have that flexibility to go make major changes. Again, unless you're talking LTIR money, then that of course changes the whole equation where you can go hide that money and open up some cap flexibility that way. Um, so I think that's really the only thing that could really deter this team from making the playoffs. I do think they're going to be a fun and exciting team to watch this season. I guess, unless you're Dallas or Colorado or a Winnipeg fan, gonna be a lot of fun to watch. I do see them finishing in the top 3 in the Central, and, if healthy, I think they could be a really tough out in the playoffs. So, here on the board, I do have them hanging out, at the Green Dragon, at the Shire, hanging out with the Hobbits comfortably in the playoffs. They're having a couple of pints with those Hobbits and having a good time for themselves here in 2024, 2025. So that's what I have for you guys today for Nashville. If there are any Preds fans out there, would love to hear your thoughts on the offseason acquisitions, where you think your team's going to go this year. Is this a year they're going to chase the cup? I think that's what Trotz and Brunette are hoping for. So, anyway, guys, again, thank you so much for all the support. Thanks for listening. If you do like what you're hearing, please don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button down below. I really do appreciate it. And until next time, be kind, show love, and God bless.